Howdy y'all! Today we're going to Africa and fly on Ethiopian Airlines. Or more like, I'm going to Africa and fly on Ethiopian Airlines and then show it to you in this trip report. But, well, consider yourself lucky that you did not have to take this trip. From an absolutely filthy cabin, a broken IFE and smelly liquid leaking from the ceiling, to a traffic alert and a go-around that turns the inside of your stomach around. The flight on this falling apart 777 on Ethiopian Airlines has it all. So we were just denied entry into Kenya. Our ordeal begins at Addis Ababa Bole International Airport. We have just arrived here on an Ethiopian 787, a journey that was nowhere as bad as this one, and that I will upload to YouTube another time. The transit experience was an appetizer of what was expecting us on our flight with Ethiopian Airlines. Like at many airports in Addis Ababa, you have to go through security control when transferring to another flight. The issue was that the security control was notably overcrowded and it was extremely chaotic. If you fly often, you've probably seen those plastic trays that you put your belongings in before they are scanned. Usually these tray tables are returned to the conveyor stored and stacked there. However, in Addis Ababa, TSA employees take a different approach. They carry the trays to the passengers waiting at the security checkpoint and then, as if it were pig food, dump the entire pile of trays in front of the passengers' feet on the ground. As there were far too few trays, people were literally fighting over the trays on the ground. And also, since everyone started to get impatient, many people tried to skip the queues, with some of them even overtaking other passengers in the walk-through detector. Man, it was just a giant mess. At the gate, we waited behind this one gentleman who kept spitting on the floor at the gate inside of the terminal building. Like, what the hell is even wrong with people nowadays? But to be honest, I did not really care anymore, as I was just exhausted at this point due to sleeping only 2 hours on the plane last night and the mayhem at the security control. So after waiting at the gate well past boarding time, I'm just happy that finally a bus arrives that is going to take us to our aircraft. Unfortunately, our ride to Nairobi today is not operated on one of those sexy looking A350s, of which Ethiopian Airlines operates 20 and has 15 more ordered, 4 of which in the rare Dash 1000 version. At least today's flight to Nairobi isn't on a 737 MAX, since I'm not really comfortable flying this exact route on a 737 MAX after what happened before. I mean, the risk is probably the same as on any other 737 MAX flight, but it would have been just a weird feeling somehow. So yeah, call me crazy if you want, but I deliberately booked a flight where this segment is not operated on a software supported rattle trap. As I step on the tarmac, there is a unique thrill in walking directly under the wing of the plane you're about to board. It's every trip reporter's wet dream capturing the majesty of the aircraft from such an intimate angle. Surprisingly, at most other airports around the world, it is strictly forbidden to walk under the wing. No idea why, it's not as if the wing would start, fall down and crush us to death, right? Moving on, this 737ER that has Ethiopian written on it doesn't look too bad. However, it is the inner values that count. And with this plane, well, see for yourself. The crew at the entrance greets us with a smile, but for the rest of the in-flight experience, I really don't know how to sugarcoat that. Firstly, there is quite a strong smell on board, like on a metro train at rush hour, so I think the cabin has not been cleaned for a while. At first glance, I like the interior design of the cabin. But if you have a closer look, you will notice that the interior is a bit filthy and quite worn. Unfortunately no window, but at least lucky us got a seat in the emergency row, which offers basically unlimited legroom. The downside is that there is no window. But to be fair, we did not pay extra to sit there, so that's fine in my opinion. But apart from the legroom, the seat is everything else but great. Admittedly, this 777 is already over 8 years old, but from the look of the seats you could easily estimate it to be at least 5 to 10 years older than that. But I don't want to go on for too much of a rant about Ethiopian Airlines here, since actually the first flight we had with them was okay, and also there are some things that are better than on most other carriers. But I will talk about that after takeoff, which was 45 minutes late by the way. Seconds after takeoff, a liquid started leaking from somewhere in the ceiling near the galley in front of us. And I'm not talking about some drops here by the way, but like it was just pouring on the ground and wouldn't stop. Kind of reminds me of that Air India accidents that happened recently. But let's focus on the beautiful things in life. Like for example the stunning view I can see when turning my head around for about 180 degrees. However, it makes me want to explore Ethiopia a bit. I think I have some kind of fetish for lesser known destinations, but ever since Bole and Bankrupt's Ethiopia videos dropped, I really want to go there. I'm not quite sure how safe it is currently from what I hear in the media, and well, we all know that Western media never lies about things like that. So if you are from Ethiopia, first, sorry for insulting your flag carrier, I hope you don't take that too personally. It's nothing against your country, just the airline, or actually just this single flight. And secondly, would you recommend me to visit Ethiopia currently, and where should I go? After the stunning views of the takeoff, I decided to switch my source of entertainment from the window to the screen stored in the armrest next to me. In the beginning, I'm really starting to question my cognitive abilities, as I'm just not able to remove the screen from the armrest. I swear I tried everything, but finally I gave it up and asked a flight attendant who told me it was broken. Figured out that the controller was also missing, so yeah, not that great when they literally advertise the in-flight entertainment when selling you the ticket. But I mean, who needs an in-flight entertainment anyway nowadays, especially on such a short flight? And I also don't want to be that guy who is always complaining, since actually my standards aren't too high. Furthermore, a single flight may not be necessarily be representative of the whole airline and everyone's experience differs. But I still hope that some insights from this trip report can be gained. However, now let's talk about the things Ethiopian does better than other airlines. The first thing that comes to my mind here is that a pillow is provided. I can't really think of any other airline from the top of my head where you would get a pillow on a 2-hour flight in economy during daytime. I mean, maybe they just forgot to remove it from the last flight, but getting a pillow after having barely slept last night is great. Other than a broken IFE screen and the ripped off remote control, there is a tray table stowed in the armrest. While it is a bit dirty and shaky, it brings us to the second great thing about Ethiopian Airlines, which is the catering. What I mean by that is that back home in Europe, I don't think that there is any airline besides maybe Turkish Airlines that serves you hot food on a 2-hour flight. Well, the food was not really warm anymore, but you get my point. The taste of my chicken was absolutely nothing to complain about, perhaps not enough salt and pepper, but those were provided extra. It was served with rice and alongside a couscous salad with almonds and raisins, which was delicious. Moreover, the meal included a bun, crackers, cookies and cream cheese. Patri went for the second option, which was a fish dish with rice that was actually still warm and seasoned nicely, but for my taste the fish tasted a bit too fishy. Obviously you can't expect a gourmet menu, but if you're getting any decent meal on a 2-hour flight in economy, there is really nothing you should be complaining about. Since I can't check on a flight map and I am not this guy, I don't really know if we have entered Kenyan airspace already. But to kill the second hour of this flight, I decided to take a look in Ethiopian Airlines in-flight magazine called Selamata. I'm quite impressed by the extensive route network, which reaches from places like Buenos Aires, Sao Paulo and Chicago to as far as Bangkok, Tokyo and Manila. But to be honest, 2 hours on board this plane is enough for me already. Yet I think if the crew is right, I could easily spend a while longer in the Airline 787 or A350. A place where I could also spend some time is the lavatory, since it was clean and actually less smelly than the cabin somehow. The whole ordeal wasn't over now, as there was still a go around and the denied entry into Kenya waiting for us. When flying over what I think is Nairobi National Park, almost reaching Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, suddenly the engine roared up and we started to climb quite steeply. This is not my first go around, but I feel on this one the G-forces were especially strong. It seems like even for my camera it was too strong, since the quality was quite blurred. I don't think if I'm making any sense right now, I don't think so. But the captain later apologized for the sudden go around, which was due to a traffic alert. As I said, unfortunately the image quality is terrible, but I think you can actually see the other aircraft here which just took off from the only runway at Nairobi airport. The go around really made my stomach go around, because, yeah, whatever. And as there were some turbulence during the second attempt, I really feel like my meal was about to exit my body from where it entered it. But luckily, what comes around goes around. Okay, sorry, I will stop. And the landing went fine, and we arrived safely at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Seeing planes of the World Food Programme parked next to private jets feels a bit wrong somehow, but other than that, I'm just happy that we finally arrived. However, we were denied entry into Kenya, which was my fault. So we were just denied entry into Kenya. What happened? The thing is, we don't have a yellow fever certificate, which is not required if you don't come from a country where there is yellow fever. However, since we changed plane in Ethiopia, we should have had this certificate. I thought we don't need it since we only transited for like 3 hours and we never left the airport, and we did not enter Ethiopia. I mean, we did not went through passport control, but apparently that's enough to be considered high risk. So we'll see if we can get the vaccine here at the airport now, or yeah, if you have to go back.